The beauty of the spiritual is its extreme simplicity. To every single issue in life, any stress, any fear, any uncertainty, any decision that one has to make, any question about what to do next, about what is right or wrong, about what happens, any deep existential uncertainty about why we're here or what the purpose of things is. To all of these questions, spirituality gives one simple, single answer. Drop the mind. Relax the mind. Drop thought. At every turn, this is the instruction. The idea is that our fears, our stresses, our worries, our efforts, our burdens, all of these come from thinking. Thinking constructs the narrative of the person who is burdened with these decisions. Thinking constructs the narrative of the person who has the past filled with regrets, who has the future filled with anticipations and worries and hopes and possibilities of problems. Simply drop thought, and you are, though you are in the waking state, enjoying the peace, the simplicity, the absolute perfection of deep sleep. Even while you see, you are not seeing. Even while you hear, you are not hearing. Even while you think, you are not thinking. For even thought requires an acknowledgement through thought that it exists. And so there is the paradoxical situation of, if there is no thought, then what thought arises itself cannot be said to be thought. Now, what does this mean? It means that there's a kind of difference between voluntary and involuntary thought. Involuntary thought, obviously, as the name suggests, happens whether you like it or not. And when such thought arises, or such emotions arise, there's a kind of choice as to whether or not to respond to them voluntarily, to deliberately take action. If one doesn't deliberately think about those thoughts or feelings, they're muted, they're blunted, they lose their effect. It is deliberate, intentional thought that is the root of all the other thought. And even the involuntary thought loses its character as thought if there is a lack of intentional voluntary thought. It's because the intentional voluntary thought is what is judging, labeling, prescribing, categorizing. It's that judging, labeling, voluntary thought which constructs the world in relationship to this imaginary entity that it calls an I. When there is a lack of voluntary, intentional, deliberate, desire-based thought, the rest of the entire structure of thought, whatever words or concepts it might use, including the word I, all of those lose the sort of nourishing root which is in that voluntary acceptance of the narrative of the I. The voluntary acceptance of the narrative of the I is what allows for the categorization, the naming of the other thought structures. So, on the one hand, drop thought, relax the mind. On the other hand, what that means is to drop voluntary intentional thought. And when voluntary intentional thought is dropped, involuntary thought ceases to be thought. It may be thought, but the character as thought, it's being called thought, it's being named thought, it's having the effect of digging its claws into you and causing suffering. That loses its power because that's all rooted in intentional, voluntary thought.